Um, Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Maisres Perek Beis Halacha Aleph. We're learning today Daf Yud Gimel. We left off on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. We began on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis learning a brisa. The case of the brisa is there are two people. We'll give them names. In the brisa, they have no names. Reuven and Shimon. Reuven tells Shimon, "You Shimon, you look like you're hungry. Why don't you take 20 figs from my fig tree?" That's what Reuven is telling Shimon. And in exchange, whenever I'll want later, I will be memale kiresi, I will fill my stomach from Shimon, from your fig trees, which is in a different place at a different time. What's the issue that the Braisa is dealing with? So going back to the rule of the Shisha Devarim that are Kiveya Lamaisres, not only is Re'iyas Penei Habayis Koiveya, not only in the scenarios where one does not intend to bring produce home, not only is in those scenarios what we will call Gemar Melacha in the field, Koiveya, the obligation of being Ma'aser, and from that point onwards you may not even snack from it. We have another 5 other than Re'iyas Penei Habayis, totaling 6. And in the Seder of the Rambam, Habayis v'hamekach. So if a sale happens, the very fact that some product was chashuv enough for it to be transacted through a sale, that in itself is considered an event that triggers, that brings about the chalois status of tevel gomor, and now you have to be toidem uma'aser. Another thing, just not to forget, that we also learned yesterday, whether like Shmuel, whether like Rabbi Yoina, our Sugyan Perek Beis, that a gift, a matana, is not like mecher. Now, whether that only follows Rabbi Meir in Mesechtes Bechoros, whether that even follows the Chachamim, that was the subject, that was the machlokes we had yesterday, Amoraim. But everyone will agree that when a transaction is viewed as a gift, that will not trigger, that will not be koiveya lamaisers. Now the Braisa says something that has to be unpackaged. What does the Braisa say? That from the perspective of Shimon who's taking the 20 figs, understanding that he has to somehow pay back with an undetermined amount, for Shimon, that was a mekach. That's what the Braisa says. And Shimon now cannot even snack on those 20. Parenthetically, we learned on top of Daf Yud Gimel that even when there is a mekach, if the purchaser takes only one fig at a time, it's also not considered an event. We are speaking about where Shimon took 2 or more at a time. That's called mitzdaref. Okay, Masha'enkein, that was the chiddush. Reuven, even when Reuven later is going to take figs off Shimon's tree, now you can argue that was also part of the mekach. Reuven, the Mishnah says, the owner of the original tree, the one from which 20 figs were taken, Reuven can take from Shimon's tree, and he can snack from them in the field, and he's not chayiv to tithe it, and we have to understand why. That will be the first part of today's Gemara. Me'inyan le'inyan, we're going to bring another brisa, also speaking about someone, I'm going to name them Reuven and Shimon, where Reuven tells Shimon, why didn't you pick yourself from my tree 20 figs? There, as we'll unpackage the Braisa and the Gemara, there's going to be a whole nother wrinkle. And that is, when one of them is a Amoritz and the other is a Chaver, we'll have to determine who is who. Which one is the Amoritz, which one is the Chaver. Let me just speak out one case in the intro. If the owner of the tree, right, if I give you a gift, okay, and I'm telling I'm Reuven and you're Shimon, I'm saying, why don't you take 20 figs from my tree? A matana. Well, no Gemar Melacha because you didn't fill the basket and cover it with leaves. We had it on Davav. Or b'makim that you didn't cover the baskets with leaves, you didn't fill the basket. If you didn't fill the basket, there's no Gemar Melacha in the field. These items are not going to be taken into the house. The guy is going to eat it in the field. Okay? A matana should also not be koiveya. So it sounds like there's absolutely no issue. He can go ahead, Shimon can go ahead, and Shimon can go and eat it. Now listen to this. When Reuven, the owner, is not in the field, when he is in the city, there will be times where we're going to have a conflict of values, which will be great. Mitzad echad, we have a rule that we learned together that lechatchila, a person should not be toirem shaloi min hamukav. You can be ma'aser shaloi min hamukav. We had a discussion whether trumas maisris also could be given shaloi min hamukav. Truma should not be given shaloi min hamukav. The word mukav in this context means close proximity. Giving truma in the ideal way means to give truma min hamukav, which would mean that which is truma and the produce for which this truma is being separated, they have to be in very close proximity for whatever reason. We learned about this in Masechtas Trumas. Now, whenever the chaver, Reuven, the owner, in the case where the chaver is the Reuven, has a chashash that Shimon is going to take the produce, Shimon is an Amma Aretz, Shimon might do something which will trigger the chiyuv of Maisris. Shimon, as an Amma Aretz, we're going to presume, will take off Truma Gedoyla. Shimon will not take off Meiser Rishon, and therefore will not take off Trumas Meiser. Shimon will think that he's not Chayiv Misa B'dei Shamayim when he is. So Reuven could have a desire to save him from sin, to be Toidem Shalom and Amukav. And that's actually another chazaka called chazaka that chaver she'ena moitzim etachas yadoi davar she'ena mesukin. I know many people are familiar with this chazal. It's borrowed when a chaver writes a sefer. They say that, when you speak is one thing, but when you write a sefer, chazaka ein chaver, as a Talmud chacham, should not be moitzim etachas yadoi when he's writing a book davar she'ena mesukin. That's a borrowed term, but the source is here. So on one hand, the chaver will say, oh my God, Shimon is a Shimon. I'm telling him to take 20 figs. Who knows that he might end up sinning? Let me save him from the sin when Reuven is in the city. I'll be tied him in the city for his 20 figs. Like this, he'll fulfill the chazaka. The problem is that he's going to be tied him shalom and amukav. Do we say, we had the sugya in Bavli once, do we say that a person should, so to say, violate a small violation to prevent his fellow of not violating a big violation? This is really what we're going to touch upon. We will see it's a machlikas tanoim, no one less than Rabbeinu HaKadosh and his father, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. It's amazing how the Shitas Rebbe, as we understand it, the koyach, the uniqueness of a Rebbe, of a Nasi B'Yisrael, that will advocate more for the other not to sin, versus then for you not to do abidi evid. That will be a big back and forth. And after we conclude that sugya, we're going to move into the final topic of today, which is also a big topic into itself, and that is tam. When a person asks his fellow, please separate trumas or maisris for me. Reuven asked that from Shimon. Reuven did not witness Shimon separating anything. He came back. Do we say chazaka shliach oisa shlichusai, and therefore Reuven can eat? He can say, I asked someone to do it, they did it. Or do we say, why? When you left, the produce was tevel. When you left, the produce was asur midoiraisa, or maybe midarabanan, that might be negeya. And here, until you hear beferish that the shliach did their shlichus, you can't rely that they did their shlichus. This is a very big topic. When this is discussed in the Bavli, I'll just say this now. The Bavli differentiates between dinei Torah, dinei derabana. By dinei Torah, we cannot say chazaka shliach hoyse shlichusei, and by dinei derabanan, we could say shliach hoyse shlichusei. We will be touching upon the same issue when it comes to eruvei tchumen, which is a derabanan. If I told someone to put down an eruv for me, could I presume they did it, or do I have to know that they did it through me seeing it, through having edim? Eruvei tchumen is a din derabanan. Trumas u'maisers, it depends when. Okay, that's in the Yerushalmi. There'll be a different approach to when we say, when we don't say. One of the approaches, which is very beautiful, is that it depends who is the initiator. If the shliach was the one that offered to do it, if I tell you, Yakir, don't get nervous, I'll be trying to you're in a rush. I offer to do it for you, I become more reliable. If I initiate it. If you asked me to do it, and according to the Yerushalmi, but yeah, it's not enough. You have to ask me, did you do it? Okay, let's leave that. This is a big topic, and let's have it. So let's go back Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines from the top. After we just clarified the mitzvah, as we explained yesterday, Chevra, okay, it's a two-way exchange. That's what it sounds like. We said Reuven and Shimon. Reuven tells Shimon, you can take 20 figs from my tree. And in exchange, he tells him, I'm going to fill up my stomach from your tree later. So the Brisa says something that is not understood. The Brisa is saying Shimon, who takes the 20, has to be Toidem, because for him the mekach is a trigger, is an event, one of the Shisha Devarim. But when Reuven later fills up a stomach from Shimon's tree, no, he doesn't have to do it. There was no Gemar Malach, obviously, if he didn't fill up a basket. Why? That's Ibim and Sarev. If we're speaking about the takers are taking it in a way where it becomes classified as mekach, which is one of the Shisha Devarim, and mekach is koivei ala maisres. So then the question is, afilu hamamalas kereisoi, then the Reuven, I'm just giving that name, who will later go to Shimon's fig tree and fill up his stomach from his figs, he should also be chayiv. Why should he be chayiv? Ve'enoi asur mishum chalifin. That's the way we're going to read it. Yes, we learned yesterday that matana ain't a kemecher, but it's not a matana. What was the mecher? Chalipin. What was the chalipin? It makes sense. You take 20 and I'll be mamalik kedesi. How is that not chalipin? It's a bona fide chalipin. The Gemara is trying to point out with chalipin because even in the case where the Reuven is a little person and for him to fill up his stomach, he'll take 5 figs. So you're going to say, how was that a mecher? Right? Now, you're right. If the kinyan is kesef, normally when you sell something, you get its value. I get that. But by kinyan chalipin, by kinyan sudar, look at all the kinyanim that, Rav does. You sell the chametz. the Rav is getting the groise permit to sell the chametz. What is the Rav giving? You can say nothing. What is the Rav giving? He's giving him his yarmulke or his gartel, and he's not even giving it to him. He's picking it up together. That's enough for a kinyan chalipin. Kinyan chalipin doesn't demand that there should be an equal value. It really doesn't even demand for Shimon to get anything permanently. So that's a kinyan chalipin. That's the kash. So Amar Rabbi Shammai, just note how the word Shammai is spelled over here. And he has a gewaldige svara here. Now guys, don't forget, Rabbi Shammai is an Amoyram. We're learning new Amoyraim. You know why the Brisa says that the mamalik kedesa is potter? Because this is such a deep Gemara. Let me say it by heart, Aviv. Certain people have dignity and they don't want to take a gift. Why wouldn't Reuven tell Shimon, take 20 from me and I'll take 20 from you? That's underlying over here. Something is strange with this. I'll fill up my stomach later. This Tana of the Brisa understands that's because really Reuven wants to help Shimon. He wants to give him a gift. He's afraid that Shimon won't want to be mekabel matana. So what does he do? He makes it sound that he's not giving him a gift. I'm going to take back from you later. He doesn't even plan to take back later. If he would have planned to take figs later from Shimon's tree, he would have given him a number. Leaving it vague is a siman that from the perspective of Reuven, listen to this, he's giving to Shimon a gift. He's just covering the gift. One of the ways you cover a gift, you give a person a loan. If you want to help your fellow as a gift, the biggest chesed, I'll give you and pay back when you could. Many people do that and they don't plan to get the money back. If they get it back, they get it back, but they gave him a ton. Now, from Shimon's perspective, when Shimon heard from Reuven that Shimon has the right to take 20, but in Shimon's mind, he's not getting a gift. He's taking the 20 because later he's going to pay back. He doesn't know what he's paying back. He's paying back. Reuven is going to fill up his stomach. So from Shimon's perspective, the 20 that he's taking is a mekach. That's why he has to be toidim, because mekach is koivei maisros. From Reuven's perspective, even if Reuven later is mamalik kereisoi, really, when Reuven told him to take the 20, he meant, I'm giving you a matana. Later, he took a matana back. I think this is gavaldik. And look how little words the Gemara uses for this. Amar Rab Shammai, Eloi chalipin. There isn't a kinyan chalipin. Why? Shaloi neschaven ho ish hazeh. The ish hazeh, our names is Reuven. Shaloi neschaven ho ish hazeh elo lohogis liboy sheyoichal. He only, lahagis here means comfortable. He wants to make Shimon feel comfortable, meaning by Shimon not feeling like he's being makabel matana. Shimon is doing a sale. So every person has a different perspective, and that perspective, it's amazing, defines what happened. Was it a mekach? Was it a matana? For the Uven, again, even if he takes later, it's a matana that Shimon later gave him. Potter. Shimon feels that his taking the 20 figs is a mekach, and therefore the Braisa says that Shimon has to be toidim because mekach is echad mishishu dvarim. Okay, and now this is a new Braisa, but you'll see the flow, because again we're speaking about two people, and let's keep on using the same names. That the principle here is Reuven. Reuven has a fig tree. Reuven is telling Shimon, take my figs. Says the Braisa, Reuven is telling Shimon, say, Ulukoit lecha esrim te'enim mishali, go take 20 figs off my tree. Now, no exchange, a bona fide matana. Again, like we learned yesterday, matana eina kemecher. And therefore, oichel kedarkoi v'hu potter. Guys, oichel kedarkoi, just to know what it means, it would mean he's eating casually. It's achilas ara, you're eating in the field. In other words, there's no Gemar Malacha. There's no Gemar Malacha. First of all, the Re'iyas Pnei Abayis is irrelevant. Remember that. Whatever Reuven is growing the figs, if he's growing it to merchandise it, if Reuven is growing it for himself, any figs that will not be taken home, why not? Because Reuven he's giving it away. So the Re'iyas Pnei Abayis becomes irrelevant. Whenever the Iyas Pnei Abayis becomes irrelevant, what becomes relevant? Gemar Malacha, how we began this Pedic, this Masechta. What's the Gemar? Just to remind ourselves, on Davav, right? The Gemar Malacha for figs is filling up the basket and covering it with leaves. And in the places where they didn't cover it with leaves, filling up the basket. That's why he's saying 20. 20 figs is not enough to fill up those baskets. So since there's no Gemar Malacha, okay, so that's the din, that there's no kvius yet, and you can eat achilas arai, casual eating or snacking, however you translate it. But the moment Reuven tells Shimon, say umalei sakalkola, if he's giving him taka a matana, but the quantity is that which will fill up a basket, or add and cover, but it's not everyone covered it with leaves. So then, indeed, lo yoichel ache ya'aser. This is very atkan, very simple. Now, let me add words that the Marafulda says. You can even look it inside. The first Marafulda under the Gemara. The Divrei HaMaschal is at the end of the narrow lines. And then the Mara, he's just giving you an intro. There's two details here. One is Chaver and Ama'aretz. That we'll have clearly in the Braisa. But before that, the case here, this is important, that the gifter, the owner of the fig tree, our Reuven, is not in the field. You'll see why that's negay. I want to read it inside. Tseyulukoit. How did he get it from? From the words tseyulukoit. Tseyulukoit, haloshen hazem mashma, says the Marafulda, that Reuven met Shimon not by the tree, not lukoit. I'm by the tree and I tell you, pick. Go out and pick is mashma that the Ba'alim, that we're calling Reuven, is Be'ir. And va'amru lechaveiroi, let's call his friend Shimon. He met him in the Beis Medrash. He met him in the city. And he tells Shimon, you know what? Let me give you a matana. Go out there. Say, why is the Marafulda saying this? Because we're going to see this in the Gemara. He's opening it up for you. That means that if in any scenario, Reuven, now let's say from the ear to the field, let's say it takes a half an hour. It takes 2 hours. It takes 10 minutes. Doesn't matter. It's not there. There is the possibility always that when Shimon is going to take, Reuven now is thinking, ooh, let me help Shimon also by being toidim for him. But for him to do that, it will be by default Shalom and Amukav, because Reuven is in the city, the tree is in the field. That's once you got this little detail, that will just help you understand the mitzias of the Braisa. So first of all, there's no chiddush in this Braisa. It's very simple. It's not going home. You need Gemar Malacha. Okay. There's no Mekach. So you need Midrabanan Echad Meshishu Devarim. The only one you have is Gemar Malacha. Gemar Malacha is Malaya Sakalkol. Now, Bamed Varam Amurim. No, I want to add another detail. Lo yoichel ache ya'aser. That means, this is important. That's okay. Just skip that one thing. And the Marafuldik speaks it out. What does it mean, lo yamali ache ya'aser? So when you read it, it sounds like Shimon cannot eat it. Shimon cannot eat it until he takes off the Trumas Umaisers. Why? Because Gemar Malacha. Because Gemar Malacha. No, the meaning you'll see soon. You'll see from the Braisa. Lo yochel ache ya'aser means we're telling Shimon that you cannot eat it until when you take off demai separations. What does that even mean? Let's read the Marafulda before we go further. V'nira lafarish. I'm jumping through. No, it's in order for it to flow. V'nira lafarish is around 9 lines under the Gemara. I'm not beginning from the beginning because he gives one understanding and then he slugs it up just to make it simple. So it's in middle of the Maraful that Tseu Malei Sakal Kala. So the Nidal Lefarish explains the Maraful that Mida Amalei Tseu Malei Lechak Al Kala. First of all, when he tells him fill up a basket, according to the Mara, even before Shimon filled up a basket, the fact that the intent was to fill up a basket, that in itself, hukva'u. That's number one. Kidetran bereish perek hakakol mishiyachapo. Now, by bereish perek we learned in the first perek that that things that are gathered in a basket, what's their gemar malacha? Either basket covering with the leaves, and loy chipa. Loy chipa means in a place where people don't have the minute to cover with the leaf, then just when it gets filled up. So first of all, I want to go back to this chiddush that Reuven telling Shimon, fill up a basket. That's what the Marafulda says. That from when he tells it to him, those figs need to be tithed. Lefikach asur lechem emarei. Okay, so this gemar malacha. Now, when the Braisa says achi ya'aser, again, it's not written. So what? But from later, we know what it means. It means that Shimon has to separate demai. Why demai? Says the Maraful, Ma'asran demai. Hoyel v'hukva'u. Efsher, that the owner is an Am Ha'aretz, which means the owner, like we mentioned in the intro, if the Am Ha'aretz was not such a big an Am Ha'aretz, it's amazing. They will learn it. Since the owner knows that the moment I tell the recipient of the gift, fill up a basket, you got to tithe it. The owner himself tithed it. For him, Groise Matana. You give a guy a gift and the guy has to start being Mesaken. So 1 second. And how would he be Mesaken it? Shalom and Amukov, which b'diavad is good. But 1 second. The problem is that if the owner is an Am Ha'aretz, then Shimon has to take into account another rule, the din of the Mai, that even when an Am Ha'aretz is telling you, I was misaking it, you rely on him only in part. He doesn't have to take off Truma Gedoyla. He has to separate Meiser Ishin to take off Trumas Meiser, etc. Let's finish reading.
Why do we, I don't understand why we assume that the owner took off Truma for produce that's still on the tree.
So two things. First of all, a couple of steps. When I tell you, Aviv, go and fill up your basket, there's a nuance. If I'm learned enough, even if I'm an Am Ha'aretz, but I'm a Talmudic Am Ha'aretz, so I know that whatever you'll take is Gemar Malachet. A lot of presumptions. Next presumption: why would I give you a gift that's not Mesukin? When I know you'll have, so I'm going to do it for you. And I did it for you. Problem is, I'm not trustworthy enough to do it fully. So you take it. You could presume that the owner was Toidim, but since the owner is an Am Ha'aretz, you have to still separate them out.
Where was the owner Toidim from?
From other produce, from very good. That's the meaning of Shalom and Amukav. Reuven is in the base medrash. Let's say it's a fig tree. That's why I'm giving Metzias is the fig tree was not 2 minutes away. It was 20 minutes away. 20 minutes away is enough time for Reuven to go home. He goes into his fridge and he takes the 2% of the figs. Let's say a basket is 50 figs. So he takes over 4 figs. That's called Shlei Ben Amukah. Shlei Ben Amukah means that the item that is becoming Truma is not in close proximity with the produce for which it's being Misakin. Masha Enkin, just a marafulda in the ratio when he tells him 20 is not a basket. Lo yukvu. So when the Braisa says oichel kedarkoi, the marafulda says oichel kedarkoi means arai, which makes sense. No one eats keva in a field. You're eating arai. Okay. Now we get the next one. This is words in the Braisa. When do we say that ba'am ha'aretz, which means when the owner is an am ha'aretz? No, it's why does Shimon only have to be toidim demai? Because the owner is an am ha'aretz. Aval b'chaver, but if the owner is a chaver, then what would you say? Same thing. The owner is giving a guy a gift. The owner knows that the gift will have Gemar Malacha. The owner is going to do the Trumas U'Maisros for him. If the owner is someone who's completely reliable, then Shimon, the recipient, doesn't have to do anything. Why should he be Toidim Damai? The owner is a chaver. That's what Rabbi says. Oichel ve'eno tzarech la'aser at all. Divrei Rabbi. Now, let me go further. When the owner is a chaver, even though what I'm saying now doesn't work for the Bamed Devar Amurim and the owner is an Am Ha'aretz, that chazaka al chaver she'eino moitze mitachas yadei davar she'eino mesuken. I would even argue that even we say this even for the Am Ha'aretz, because even by the Am Ha'aretz, we are relying that Am Ha'aretz did something. Why? Because everyone has that feeling. If once I'm giving you produce, it's mamish like today, when you give a person food, you give him kosher food. No, it happens to be by us by food, kosher or not kosher. Produce in Eretz Yisrael is not that way. It's not kosher until when you do something, and then it becomes kosher. So we're not familiar with it. We don't practice this. But people that live in Eretz Yisrael practice it. Like, why would I give you something that you still have to be Tleidim U'Maaseh? You know, I'm sure, I don't know how it is now. There were markets, I remember in Eretz Yisrael, that had signs that it's not yet Mesukin, and then you would do it yourself. But that was clear. Many people, you get used to it. Not anymore. But I'm sure things have a hechshed. But I'm saying things normally in Israel say it's already mesukan. Has to be mesukan. Now the chiddush here is, this is only divrei Rabbi. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Aviv, who was Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? Rabbi's father. Rabbi, very good. Shimon ben Gamliel, look, the son comes first, and then the father argues that I'll agree with the first part. When do we say that when Shimon takes the figs that he's going to fill the basket up, he has to be ma'aser damai, that taka fix when the owner is an am ha'aretz. But when the owner is a chaver, punkt fakert, which means in English, just the opposite. Then Shimon, the recipient, has to take off all of the trumas u'maisres. If the owner is a chaver knows that you're not allowed to be toidim lechatchila shaloi min amukev. Who are we going to say that he'll be toidim shaloi min amukev? The am ha'aretz. Why? Another chazaka. Shaloi nechshadu chavedam litraim shaloi min amukav. So really, you see, there's a conflict here. On one hand, there's a chazaka al chaver she'enu yotzim mitachas yadav she'enu mesuken. That should motivate the owner to be mesaken it. That's Rebbe. Shimon Gamliel says there's another chazaka. There's another rule. Shaloi nechshadu. What the chaver is going to take shaloi min amukav? Now, there is a reason why the chaver is taking shaloi min amukav. Why is he taking shaloi min amukav? Because he wants to make sure that the recipient is going to not eat, not kosher. Now, I want to know who the recipient is. Is the recipient a chaver or is the recipient an am ha'aretz? That will be very significant. If the recipient is a chaver, why would the owner of chaver be toidim shaloi min amukav? Why would he do that? You're not allowed to do that. If the recipient is an am ha'aretz, then there's more side to think that the owner tells himself, from my ruchnius, I should not be taking shalom and amukav. That's for me. I'll be violating a minor violation. Especially if we're going to learn that the din of min amukav is midrabanan. Especially. And even if it's a doiraisa, there's no isur misa b'dei shamayim. But the other person, the other yid, if I won't take off truma, if the other yid is an am ha'aretz, even though the am ha'aretz is toidim, but he's not going to be trumas u'maisros. He doesn't know, but the emes will still be chayv misa b'dei shamayim. So really, this touches on the question, am I allowed to violate a minor violation to prevent my fellow from violating a major violation? taking it off Shaloi min Amukav is going against what the Chachamim said, that Lechatchila betrayed him only min Amukav. Yes. But it's not a violation for which it's not shaykh, even if it's a doiraisa, there's no misa b'dei shamayim. So Amar Rabbi, Rabbi wants to clarify where exactly does he argue with his father. Roya ani es devarai medivrei Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. I want to tell you that if Rabbi said these words, he wouldn't have said that I see my opinion is better medivrei Rabban Shimon. He would have says medivrei Abban. That's exactly, look inside the top of Rasharilia. That was his girsa. But then the machabed of the Braisa didn't make it so personal. I mean, it's bad enough to say my opinion. The Gabbai likes saying that statement, that I think that my opinion is better than your opinion, right? I see, even though that's me, but I project it on him. So that Rebbe argues, and then he has to rub it in. You know what? I'll give you. I'll be now the middle. That what? That I'm right. Why am I right? But when am I right? Because mutav sheyitroimu shaloim and amukav. Is it not better for the owner to be toidim, violating Shalom and Amukov? Now, this is a very big statement, because what do we extrapolate from the words of Rabbi? That when did Rabbi say his opinion? When the recipient is who? When the recipient is an Amaretz. Now, I got a bomb question at that the Gemara is going to speak out. How can you even think? Remember when I began saying, I was speaking about that the owner is an Amaretz. When we were learning the Braisa, the owner is an Amaretz. But the recipient has to be a chaver. Let's go to, what was the nation in the Braisa? That when I tell the Amaretz, fill up your basket. So the din is that the picker has to be Ma'aser Demai. To whom do you give an obligation to be Ma'aser Demai? Who do you tell that to? Only to a chaver. Faket, what are you telling an Amaretz? The Amaretz never takes off Meiser Ish and Trumas Meiser. The Amaretz only took off Truma Gedoyla. Not all of them. I mean, there is most of them did everything, but anyways, this is going to be problematic. The Gemara is going to go back to that. But let me go back over here. Rebbe is saying, why am I right over my father? Because since the recipient is an Amaretz, the owner, the chaver, that's what he says. If the owner is a chaver, then he doesn't have to be ma'aser anything. He took it off. Why did he take it off for him? Because he's afraid that if he won't do it for the Amaretz won't do it properly. He'll only take off Truma Gedoyla. Okay. Bottom line, what do we learn from Rabbi? We learn from Rabbi that if the owner is a chaver and the recipient is a chaver, then what? Then Rebbe will agree to his father that the picker has to be Troidem Vada. He has to take off all the Trumas Umaisers. Because why would the chaver be Troidem Shalom and Amukav when the chaver knows that the picker is not going to do any violation? The picker is a chaver. That's important. So Amar Rab Ze'era comes out that chaver sheshilach chaver. Now we have an agreement in the case where the owner is a chaver and the picker is a chaver, and they're both in the city, and Reuven the chaver tells Shimon, his friend the chaver, why don't you go into my field and pick for yourself a basket full of my figs? When Shimon picks it, Shimon has to be ma'aser everything vadai. Even Rebbe will be moidem. Have a boy in Meimar, and I'll tell you why. Rab Ze'er is speaking out. For mitzad the shita of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that always says shaloi nechshetu chavedim litram shaloi min amukov. When the owner is a chaver, when the owner is a chaver, of course, he won't do shalom and amukov. So now that the picker, who is a chaver, picks it up, tzarachu la'aser, tzarachu goes on the picker. That's pshita. Even Rebbe, or man the Omar, mutav sheyitrei mishalom and amukov. But Rebbe, who says that if I have to weigh my ruchnias to your ruchnias, I gotta pick yours before mine. I can't say I don't want to do any violation. You might be chayv misvudei shamayim. That's your problem. That's not the attitude of a Rebbe, of a Nasi. They don't think that way. We're responsible for each other. Even where I have to lower my ruchnias for you not to sin. So even according to Rebbe, why would the chaver lower his standard? And yes, do it, shalom and amukov. That's to prevent the other from not violating. But when the other is a chaver, when the picker is a chaver, why he won't do it for the chaver, and therefore it's tzarich la'aseh. The type of kiruv that you give to someone who's not frum is more than what you give to someone who's already in the right path. That's what you see from over here. They don't need. They're good already. Okay, let's leave it at that.
So actually, you have the 4 cases, right? Chaver, amar, chaver, chaver.
You can say that.
And these 4 scenarios here where you could have it, right? Where they argue?
They're arguing when the owner was a chaver, when the picker was an amoritz. So Rabbi says that. I'm sorry, 1 second. First, where's the Braisa, and then where are they arguing? The Braisa had 2 cases. That's what he's getting confused. If the owner is an amoritz and the picker is an amoritz, which will be a problem, that is where we say the Braisa is saying the picker has to separate the mai. Because the owner, the amoritz, Haka did it, but he only did it like an amoritz. If the owner is a chaver and the picker is an amoritz, achleikas Rebbe and Ashvak. Rebbe says that since the owner is a chaver, he knows the picker is an amoritz, he'll be toidem shaloim and amukov, and the picker doesn't have to do anything. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says since chazaka, since loy nechshetu chaverim, the owner is a chaver, to be toidem shaloim and amukov, the owner did nothing.
Even when it's an amoritz.
Even though it's an amoritz. That's the amoritz's problem. Don't forget the amoritz was toidem, truma gedola. But now there is a possibility that he's not gonna take off trumas meises. Huh? The picker is a chaver. The picker has to know whether if the owner is an amoritz. Very good. If the picker is amoritz, that's the case of the Braisa. Then the picker has to separate the mai separations. Because the amoritz who gave him a gift was toidem shaloim and amukov, lo nechshetu chaverim litrim shaloim and amukov. But the amoritz did. He's being nice. He's being a nice man. He's giving a gift. He's giving a perfect gift. Only the mai. That's it. That's what the Braisa said. Very good. Now Rabbi Yoin is asking, how can you tell me that the picker is an amoritz? Because you want to make the Braisa symmetrical. If the picker is an amoritz, that's what Rebbe is saying. The picker is and the owner is an amoritz, which will be the first case of the Braisa. First part of the Braisa, it sounds like you're treating the picker like a chaver. Why is that? Because whenever the Chachamim tell someone, you have to separate the mai, to whom are they telling it to? Only to a chaver. But v'hacha, you just said at ovid le'amoritz. Now you're treating. What are you saying? You're saying, why did Rebbe say that the chaver did everything? The chaver should not be toidem shaloim and amukav, because the picker is an amoritz. If the picker is an amoritz, then the first case of the Braisa doesn't work with a picker who is an amoritz, because how can you tell an amoritz you have to be ma'asir the mai? And the meaning of ma'asir, like we read in the Marafulda, is the mai. And the Gemara gives a big pertinent answer. Don't make all the amaratzim people that don't separate it properly. The majority of the amaratzim did separate it properly. Not only that, when a am ha'aretz buys produce from a am ha'aretz, there's many of them that would separate the mai. It's not like not one am ha'aretz separated everything. It's not true. Now you're right. There was a miyuta, the minkar. There was a substantial minority that they only did part. I got that. So a chaver has to do the other part. Many amaratzim also did the other part. When you walk into a conservative temple, there are people that keep Shabbos there. I don't think no one keeps Shabbos. It's important to understand that. The shul doesn't keep Shabbos, halachically. But there are people, some amaratzim do everything beautiful. So Amar Rabbi Yosi, kan v'kan amar, you're right. We're not making things more complicated than they have to be. The whole thing, the whole Braisa is speaking about a scenario where the picker is an amaretz, clearly. The Bamed Dvarim Amurim in the Braisa was whether the owner is a chaver, whether the owner is the picker is always an Amaretz. Ella b'shvil echad shu mesakenu nikra chaver. The Braisa is telling the picker, listen here, the owner, in the case, when the owner is an Amaretz, the Amaretz will be Todim Shalom and Amukav. And something he accomplished, because b'di'evet it's good. Now, what did he do? We don't know. So there is a din of the Mai. So the Braisa can tell the picker, the Amaretz, listen, this is obligated to be the Maid. You have to separate the whatever the Maid demands. Whether they'll do it or not, some of them will. And because of the one that will do it, the Braisa says that it has to be done. I think this is beautiful. The whole sugi is beautiful. This attitude of Rabbi, that I have to lower my standard. Now, how to apply this is very dangerous because it's a slippery slope. But let me speak, at least to simplify it, in any framework of halacha, even Yidden that try to go lefnim yishuras hadin, when it comes to helping other Yidden getting closer to Yiddishkeit, you'll find it in all of us, that within the framework of halacha, we're not going to be machmer. We're going to be machmer and Abbas Yisrael. That's the way we're going to word it. Right? We do things that for you should not have relied on that. You invite people that don't keep Shabbos to come to you. Why do we do that? Either they're going to drive anyways. So this is good because there is a greater purpose. You're helping them. But if it's just for you, between you and God, you wouldn't rely on that. So lo nechshu tu chaverim, that what? Not to be Todim Shalom and Amukav, that's for them. But to save another Jew from possibly violating something worse, he dafke will do something Shalom and Amukav, even though it's a minor violation. Okay, and now the second topic of today. It's fine that it's late because we're gonna open it up. Simple. When there is a shlichus to be toidem u'ma'aser, that means I'm rushing. You see that I'm rushing. I want to be separate trumas u'maisers. Don't forget, trumas u'maisers. One of the sources of shlichus in kedushin peirik beis in the Bavli is from truma. Kain torimu gam atem l'raboy shluchachem. So you imagine the shliach tells the mishalech, do what you need to do. I'll be toidem u'ma'aser for you, and I come back. Now, of course, if when I come back and everything looks exactly the way it looked before, so then there was something inherently that's telling me nothing happened. If I remember how the pile looked and the pile looks the same. But when I see that there's a change, I'm adding that detail. There's nothing in the Metzias that goes against the fact that the Shliach didn't do. So there's a chazaka that Shliach chayse shlichus, and you can rely on that. I don't have to find Ido to say, did you do it? I don't have to do that. That's what the Gemara is saying. And this is said by two sets of Amiroi. Rabbi Yosi b'shem Rab Sheshes and Rabbi Lozer bei Rabbi Yosi in the name of Rabbavan. They both say the same thing. That ha'omer lechaveri. And this is formulated exactly the way it's formulated. That the Shliach initiated. The Shliach offered that ani ma'aser al yodecha. Don't worry, I'll do it for you. Like we mentioned. And the owner went away. The owner comes back. The circumstances are lending themselves to the fact that something happened. Someone went through the stuff. Or the opposite. It's not like everything looks exactly the way I left it. That will be a problem. So the din is that I don't have to be there, the owner. I don't have to have witnesses. Says the Gemara, hold on. We don't always say that. And the question will come from the sugya of Eruv Techumen. Now, what's Eruv Techumen? Even though there's a Shita Rabbi Akiva that Techumen is really Doiraisa, but the Eruv Techumen that we do, that we don't allow for a person to walk Shabbos and Yontif beyond 2,000 amas, L'kula alma, that's a din darabanan. And one of the ways of allowing myself to walk more in a single direction will be by physically placing a certain amount of food, placing it obviously within 2,000 amas of where I will physically be bein hashmashes. Halachically, the words will be is that where the food is placed will be koine shvisa. It will be considered as if I am there when Shabbos came in. And then I have to count the 2,000 amas from my food, which will not allow me to walk more, but it's going to allow me to walk more in that direction. What happens if I give the Eruv Techumen to someone who's a cheresh shoyte v'katan? What's the deficiency of the cheresh shoyte v'katan is that when the food is placed, there is kavana needed. The kavana is that this food should be koine shvisa for the owner of the food. You have to have that intent. It should acquire that location as the dwelling place for the owner. Chedesh Shoytev Kotten halachically don't have enough das to have intent, so there's no kavanah there. So that's the case of the Mishnah, and we're going to skip the parentheses. Or biyad misha eno moide be'erov, like a kuti. So by kuti is different. Kuti has intent, but we don't. Why would he do it? He doesn't believe in it. So the Mishnah says enoi erov. Simple. Okay, it's not an erov. Now, here comes the difference. What happens if I give the food biyad chedesh shoytev kotten, and then I gave it to the wrong guy? So v'im omar la'acher lekap. So I tell my friend next to me, who's an adult, go running after the chedesh, and you put it down. That other has intent. He's an adult. That other is not a kuti. Basically, I sent the second shlich. Im omar la'acher lekap lemenu, says the Mishnah, hareze eruv. Hareze eruv, but look in Daf Yudalid. But Omar Rabbi Lazar, hold on. Not hareze eruv, you can rely that he did it. No, you cannot. You have to have someone who sees the chedesh giving it to him. Tzorich la'amoid imoy. That's gewaldig. So here you have to have someone who saw the chedesh shoytev kotten or kuti giving it to this other guy. You can't say chazaka shliach chaysam shlichusay. No, but that's the second answer. The first answer of the Gemara is that you can rely on the gadol once he got it to put it down. But how do you know that the chedesh gave it to him? That's the first answer. So Amar Rabbi Chia bar Addo, of course. Khan over here by the Trumos, there was one shliach. The shliach says, "I'm going to do it." You can rely on him. He's a gadol. Here you gave it to a katan. A katan means either the chedesh shoytev a katan or to the kuti. Even though you sent shliach number 2, how do you know shliach number 1 gave it to shliach number 2? For that, you have to have sarach la'amay dimoy. But emechanami, once people saw that shliach number 2 received it, then you don't have to see anything. That's the first answer. Second answer is Rab Chanani b'shem Rab Chanina. Afilu temer kamek gadol, kamek katan. No, come on, oy ba'oymer loy orev al yodai. That's very important. In the case of Erev Techumen, the owner asked someone do something for me. If I am the initiator, that's the word. I don't know that you did it. I cannot say shliach chazaka shliach shlichusay. Over here, in the case of Maisres that we began the sugya, was dafka where the shliach told the mishaleach, "I'll do it for you." They initiated. But in the Bavli, like we mentioned, the answer dear the Gemara gives is Doiraisa de Rabbanan. Doiraisa de Rabbanan would mean that Maisres is the Rabbanan and Tchumen is Doiraisa, even though it's not the 2,000 amas. So since it's touching upon a Doiraisa, you have to be more machmer. This Doiraisa de Rabbanan and who initiated, both of them are brought down in the Rambam. That's question one of the cases we paskins both like the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. That's very negei halacha l'maisa today. When it comes to shlichus, there are many things that one person does which will affect you. Do you have to ask them that you did it? Or you don't even have to ask them?
Can you ask I'm hard to be a shaliach for
I'm a audit and I'm a audit
for a tichum?
No, but when it comes to other areas, yes.
Tichumim, okay, thank you, Rabbi.
To be continued.